Hey, what's up? Zach here. And if you've seen The Last Dance on Netflix, I'm sure you caught the sneaker episode where Michael Jordan was talking about his feet being soaked in blood and absolutely killing him after wearing the Jordan 1 for his last game at Madison Square Garden back in 1998, years after its initial release, and also after a season of wearing the Jordan 13. But if the Jordan 1 was good enough for Jordan years earlier in the 80s, and it's arguably one of the most worn sneakers on the planet, why did they tear his feet up so bad the last time he wore them in a game? And is the Jordan 1 dangerous for you to wear? Let's find out. Now, to answer this, you first have to look at what both the Jordan 1 and the Jordan 13 are made of and what their performance characteristics are. I mean, there's no point in denying that Jordan 1 was a real turning point for sneakers, and for its time in 1985, they were a real head-turning design with a more beefed-up midsole, really strong upper overlays made of that action leather, which is really just cow leather with a polyurethane coating, not to mention the famous Jordan 1 outsoles with that bullseye traction in the forefoot, as well as all this compartmentalized rubber in the heel. And there's also plenty of video evidence of Michael Jordan absolutely destroying defenders in these shoes when they were his regular game day shoe. But fast forward to 1998 when Michael Jordan was playing in the Jordan 13s for the bulk of that season, and after 13 years, they featured a lot more forgiving materials in the midfoot and especially the uppers, with more soft leathers, more textile fibers, and in the midsole you had 2 Zoom airbags, plus just a midsole that was a lot more ergonomic. It just fit the bottom of the foot a little bit better, so it cradled the arch exponentially better than a flat rubberized midsole, which obviously offered less than optimal shock absorption when talking about the Jordan 1s. And the outsole on the 13s is actually a personal favorite of mine. Now, it's modeled after a Black Panther's paw, and these have exceptional lateral stability, but they're also solid as a rock in how they cradle what's called the glabrious junction of your foot. Now, what is that? The glabrious junction of your foot is where the bottom of your foot and the top of your foot meet, where the skin meets. And you can actually tell exactly what it is because the skin on the bottom of your foot's going to look a lot different than the top. And that equator of your foot is also where the shoe is going to have the maximum potential to stabilize your foot going side to side. And the Jordan 13s do this better than actually a lot of modern day shoes do. And when you put these two sneakers head to head on court looking at their speed on the suicide test, the Jordan 13s came in at 14.90 seconds and really did their best work when cornering with that mid and outsole just made perfectly for grabbing the court when the foot was off center. Now, versus the Jordan 1 that came in at 15.76 seconds. And beyond just what time the shoe gave me is how the shoe made me work for that time. Because when you look inside the Jordan 1s, they're almost a flat sole without really any wide lateral flange or any dynamic elements to really redistribute the weight. So each stride induces much more shock into the foot and leg versus on the 13s. Plus on turns, the foot is kind of allowed to slide back and forth within the shoe on the insole or the strobo board, so there's more friction and heat buildup with each cut, pivot, or turn. However, when looking at just the traction both on an asphalt or concrete and a hardwood court, the Jordan 1's traction holds up just uncommonly well, even against brand new outsole designs designed with AI and loads of player data. It just really goes to show you that sometimes a good design can hold up over a long period of time. And if you're a fan of Jordan brand or just a sneakerhead in general, I'm sure you realized I did that suicide test on a clear rubber outsole on the Jordan 1, and as a lot of us know, clear rubber does not grip as well on asphalt or concrete as a dyed rubber outsole, and I was still getting really terrific grip even on this clear rubber outsole. So it just shows you just how well the Jordan 1's outsole was designed. Even on the more slick outsole tread, it's still grabbing around those corners. But what I think is even more interesting than the grip of the Jordan 1s is how that grip almost dooms the shoe, because when you're stopping on the court, the Jordan 1 is grabbing really well. However, it's not grabbing your foot inside the shoe that well. So all that inertia and body weight, even though the shoe is stopped, is still moving within the shoe. So the grip of the Jordan 1s and how great it is also really accentuates how bad the shoe is for holding you inside the shoe. But I think my favorite part of the performance comparison of these shoes was the jump height test. Now, when I compared both models' jump height scores, the Jordan 13s gave me 34 centimeters centimeters of jump height on average, which I really thought was pretty remarkable given how old the shoe is. However, what was more impressive to me was the Jordan 1's jump height scores, which I got 27 centimeters on average of jump height, which is better than some new shoes I've tested recently. And for me, the key factors in both these shoes' jump height scores came down to their respective midsoles. The Jordan 13 just has a much more ballistic type midsole. It's also a lot more ergonomic. Remember, it has the carbon fiber shank and zoom airbags on both sides of it, plus that midsole is much more cradling to those really large arch muscles, so the shoe's just easier to get up off the ground, plus it gives you a little bit of a springboard effect from the carbon fiber. And on the Jordan 1's, kind of an opposite effect. Remember, the midsole in the Jordan 1's is a little more rubberized and just gives them a little bit more pop versus shoes nowadays with more standard EVA or eTPU midsoles. But once again, the problem in the Jordan 1's comes down to what happens when you land from that jump. On the 13's, the midsole foam and the air disperse that force into the shoe, whereas on the 1's, once again, they force your foot muscles to make up that difference in shock absorption. I think one of the biggest differences between the 1's and the 13's that really goes under the radar and has a ton to do with how much the foot is allowed to slip back and forth in the shoe is just how much stiffer and more resilient the 13's heel counter is, this little plastic piece that goes up here that controls your heel motion. Whereas on the 1's, I mean, I cut right through it, it's just made a really flimsy material. And on the 13's, it's really stiff, so it's holding that foot and it's holding that heel in. And honestly, that more than anything brings me to why Michael Jordan's feet were soaked in blood. All of these factors all increase friction and heat within the shoe, and when you're playing pro basketball, they will lead to your skin breaking down pretty quick from abrasions and blistering. Even though Michael Jordan had a really great game that night, it was Michael Jordan's body that was making up for all these performance metrics versus when he was playing in the 13's when they were just doing a lot of that work for him. And that's also the reason his feet were fine in the Jordan 1's a decade before and writhing in them 13 years later. Your body just gets used to what's around it. Same reason a carpenter's hand gets blistered the first time they use a hammer for an extended period, and after their skin adapts, it's no big deal. And in Jordan's case, he built up all that skin tolerance and muscles in his foot, only to be presented with much more plush options later down the road as new Jordan shoes came down the line. And then once he got adapted to those, all of a sudden you throw the Jordan 1's in the mix during a really high level of play, and that cycle just has to start all over again, and your body being 13 years older, well, that's really hard transition to make over just one game. But so to answer the question, are the Jordan 1's dangerous for you to play in if they were able to do that to Michael Jordan's foot, one of the greatest of all time? Well, no. I mean, your foot's gonna get used to whatever you put it in, and remember, his foot being soaked in blood, I mean, that can happen with just a big blister. So, sometimes, Netflix with these documentaries, they're trying to hype it up a little bit, and they're trying to get you to click and watch longer. So just because his foot was soaked in blood doesn't mean, the shoe was literally tearing his foot from his ankle. But I do think if you're used to playing in shoes like the Jordan 13 or shoes that have just come out this year, remember, you're going to be used to that plush feeling underfoot. You're going to be used to the stack under your foot, and when you go to a shoe that pretty much has none in the forefoot, your body is not going to like that for a little while. It's the same reason why you can't just start barefoot running a marathon right away if you've been using maximalist type Hoka running shoes. Remember, your foot just has to get used to whatever it's in slowly. And remember, there are some people that just do not do well with low stacked shoes, and there are people that do just fine with them. So it really is on a case by case basis. However, if you are somebody that is used to the modern day basketball shoe, it's probably better off that you stay with that modern day basketball shoe, because while your body is trying to adjust to it, you could be leaving yourself susceptible to stress fractures, bursitis, or even really bad skin issues like blistering or abrasions. And also, there are ways to make the Jordan 1 feel like a more modern day shoe, and that usually comes down to putting an orthotic in the shoe, whether it be over the counter or custom. Now, if you are interested in custom orthotics and kind of don't know where to start, I do have a 4-page digital download with my favorite builds for orthotics for certain foot types, as well as people of different weights and measures of their foot. So if you want to check that out, that is down in the description for download. But I think one of the biggest points that got driven home to me when I was making this video is that sometimes newer isn't always better. I mean, especially in the case of the Jordan 13, honestly, this shoe is a lot better than a lot of modern day basketball shoes that I've reviewed this year. And honestly, the design of it is pretty simple. The design of the outsole is designed after a panther paw, just something you find in nature. It's just a simple herringbone design, and it's a really ergonomic midsole. It just mimics the shape of the bottom of the foot. And with a lot of these other shoes now, they're made with more player data and force plate analysis, and they're using AI to design the outsole. I mean, sometimes I think this kind of gets more to analysis to paralysis. They're just trying to find a solution to a problem that doesn't exist. In 1998, they figured this out and they found a pretty darn good design that holds up just as well today. But honestly, I'd love to hear from you. Do you ever find yourself playing competitively in the Jordan 1? And what's your experience been with them? And if not the Jordan 1, then what's your favorite Jordan shoe to play in? Let me know in the comments down below. And like Jordan said in that episode of The Last Dance, there's been a lot of innovation in shoe technology from the 1 to the 13. So if you want to see all the innovation in technology from the 13 to the 36, make sure you click on this video up above and subscribe down below. Respect your rubber and foam and action leather. I'll see you in the next video.